Now the CCI routing switching version 5 contents, if you talk about the contents or the version 5 blueprint topics, now if you're already aware of the version 4, this is something no more. So in case of version 5, a little bit customized, and also it is given what percentage of topics will be covered in your written exam or in the lab exam. So if you see the major section which will be tested here are layer 2 and layer 3 technologies. You can see it's going to cover 60% of your CCIE routing switching lab exams. Even in the written also it is 55% almost, and then VPN technologies. Now, which means this is going to cover 80% of your CCIE lab exam. So which means these are the three major topics which you need to have a very good understanding, and then remaining all are also tested, like services 15%, and then infrastructure security, which is tested again 5% of the questions will be tested on that. Now the major enhancement in the new version 5 syllabus, or when you talk about version 4 and 5, is it's more IPv6 now. So you have some more IPv6 to be tested in your CCIE lab exams. Let me just give some overview of each and every section. Now there is a section called Network Principles. It has been added, which includes some basic foundation topics which are required for majorly your CCIE written exam. But these network principle topics will not be covered in your lab exam, because there is no much lab questions tested in this from these network principles. If you see here, there is 0% of the questions in the lab exam. But if you are preparing for written exam, you need to go through with those theoretical topics which are covered in the written exam. Now layer 2 technologies. Now in case of layer 2 technologies, it's a complete CCNP switch. If you have from the CCNP knowledge, whatever you have done in the CCNP switch, almost it covers all the topics from the CCNP switch. And then layer 2 technologies, like now the major change in the layer 2 technologies, there is no more frame relay added in the new version. So no frame relay. Instead you will be tested on some PPP HDLC protocols, same as previous versions, and then you will be tested on some PPP OE, and then Metro Ethernet WAN connections. So Metro Ethernet WAN connections. So these are the major things. There's no more frame relay, we can say, in the new version of the CCIE blueprint topics. Layer 3 technologies, again mostly you have the same topics what you have, and the ISS is something covered in your CCIE written exams and BGP. So this all comes under IGP category, but the thing is you will be tested more on V4 and V6. So which means you will be running some dual stack environment in your examinations, where you will be doing where we'll be implementing some RIP, EHR, OSPF protocols in both IP version 4 and IP version 6 as well. So, and one more thing, multicasting also comes under this. Multicasting technologies from the version 4 is now included in both layer 2 and layer 3 domains. In VPNs section, if you compare with the old version of version 3, you still have MPLS L3 VPNs, but apart from that you will be tested on some GRE VPNs, and then we'll be implementing some DM VPN topics here, and then IPsec site-to-site VPNs. Not a complete IPsec VPNs, all the types. We'll be getting into some IPsec VPNs using a pre-shared key. We'll be doing that. And Get VPN, it just covers only the written exam, which generally says just to describe Get VPN. But practically in the lab exam, you will be tested completely on these 4 major topics of L3 VPNs and L2 VPNs. L2 VPNs is also there. And then GRE, DM VPN, and IPsec VPNs. So in the previous version, there is no DM VPN kind of things implemented over there. And then the remaining 3 sections, we have some infrastructure security, where we'll be implementing some layer 2 and layer 3 security kind of things on the routers as well as on the switches. And then when it comes to infrastructure services, we'll be doing some layer quality of service, layer 3 quality of service, and some other network services like HSRP, VRRP, GLBP for IP version 4 and IP version 6. And also we'll see some other services like DHCP, those kind of things, NTP protocol like that, which includes some of the system management services like DHCP, as I said. In optimization, we have some other topics like EEM, some other topics EEM, and then NetFlow. These kind of topics comes under the category of network optimizations. and there's no layer 2 quality of service tested in your lab exams. It's something covered only in the written exam only. Now, if I go with a list of topics, this is something what you will find. I got this list of topics here, but probably this is something, in case of version 5, there are some few new topics has been added. The architecture differences like iOS XE and iOS. This is something what covers only in the written exam, like Get VPN, ISIS, BGP, convergence features, L2 VPNs, again L2 VPNs, MPLS L2 VPNs, and IPv6 network address translations. This is something what covers only in the written exam. And these are all the topics added in the new version of the CCI written exam and the lab exam. Now these are the topics which will be covered both in the lab and the written exam as well, like DMVPN, IP6 site-to-site VPNs, IPv6 first hop security, and then BFD bidirectional forwarding detection, and some packet capturing, interpreting the packet captures. It will be in the diagnostic section, and then EHRP name mode. This is the new configuration in the EHRP. We'll be getting into that in the IGP sections. And let's come back. There are some topics which has been removed, not really required to discuss. These are some of the topics which has been removed from the version when you compare with the version 4. And the topics which has been moved from version 4 to version 5 also, those topics are like IPv6 multicast, which was there in the older and the new versions. So these are the topics written exam. And again, PFR, these topics are only covered in the IP written exam, we can say. Now the last thing we'll discuss about the recommended hardware for your CCI lab exam preparation. Now, first thing we'll see, according to the Cisco, like the complete CCI lab exam will be tested completely on a 100% virtualized environment, where the exam will not be tested on the real devices again, but it's going to be very near to the real devices. Now, the recommended platform by Cisco is either you'll be using some ISR G2 routers, that is 2900, or it can be 1900 series or 3900 series, which comes by default with the 15.iOS versions, the next release after 12.4. So which means you'll be using the latest 15.iOS versions in your CCI exams. And also switches also, you'll be using some 3560X series switches, which comes with 15.0 SE iOS versions. So these are the other platforms which also supports this iOS based versions. You'll be using some 15.iOS versions. So any other platform which is equivalent, which can run the equivalent 15. Versions as given in this slide, probably you can use any other platforms as well. But these are the recommended platforms or the hardwares from the Cisco. Now, if you are planning to set up your own rack, probably you will be using 15.iOS versions. So which means you will be using some ISR G2 routers, either 1900, 2900 series or 3900 series routers with some 15.3 iOS versions. Okay, so if you're using for switching, you'll be using some X series or E series switches, either 3560 or 3750 switches. The listed here you can see. So this is something, a recommended hardware setup where you can completely test each and every feature. 100%, almost all the features can be tested in this environment. But let's say if you're already if you're already preparing for version 4 already, or you have your own rack, probably not this one, you can still use the G1 routers, ISR G1 series routers, your 1800, 28 and 3800 series, which do support your 15.iOS versions. But almost you can implement and test almost most of the things by using some 3550, 3560 switches. Okay, so not 100% you can test the features, but almost more than 80% of the things still works on this particular platforms. Again, it's really inexpensive to set up your own rack. That is something most of the people do not go with that. But if you are planning for a set up your own rack, these are the possible options you can go with. So alternatives to rack setup, either you can go with some online rack rentals. So if you just Google it, probably you'll find CCI lab rack rentals. Probably you'll find a lot of rack rental providers online. Probably you can go with online rack rentals. And alternatively, you can use some simulation tools like GNS3 and Packet Tracer tools, which generally I prefer to use mostly on the simulation tools here. Okay. Now, one of the drawback with this simulation tools is you may not get 100% tested results like you do on the real devices, but it works most of the time. So I'm not saying that it's not going to work, but it's works most of the time. Sometimes some issues or bugs in the softwares which can lead to not having a proper output, but that's something a little bit rare. That's what I have realized. And whatever the things, so normally what I suggest you to do is you can test most of the things on the simulation tools. That is something what I do, either by using the GNS3 programs or Packet Tracer programs. And whatever the things you cannot test, that is something you can go for online RAG rentals. And mostly 80% of the things which can be tested on the simulation tools, and whatever the remaining 20% of the things which cannot be tested on the simulation tools, you can go with some online RAG rentals. So that's something what I have done you can do. That is something what I recommend, or you can set up your own RAG. So these are the alternative options which we'll be using. So mostly in my scenarios, in my video trainings here, I'll be using mostly the simulation tools for testing most of the labs, either using a GNS3 or a Packet Tracer programs, where I'm going to integrate the iOS and those things, and I'm going to show you the labs, and whatever the things we cannot test. I have my own rack setup. Probably you can either I'll go with a rack setup. I have some 3550, 3560 switches. I'll be using some racks in most of the switching concepts here. So probably this is an introduction to the complete CCIE. So we have seen some of the topics here. Okay. So these are all the things what we have discussed here. Probably in the next videos from onwards, I'll be getting into some. Now the way we go with the topics is, first we'll be starting with some layer 2 security topics. So in that layer 2 security, we'll be covering mostly all the layer 2 technologies in one part, and then we'll be getting into some layer 3 technologies with some IGP protocols, and then later on we go with the basic BGP, and then we'll be getting into some VPN. That is the next section we'll be covering. After that, with some MPLS, what is VPN, and different types of VPN options like MPLS VPNs, TMVPN, and then so on, GRE VPNs, advantages and disadvantages of this, and then we'll see some IPsec VPNs. Now these are all things we'll be covering within the scope of CCIE routing switching version 5 exam topics. And then we'll be getting into some of the other topics like security, services, and then finally some optimization kind of things. So this will be the order of the way we are going with our training program. This is how we'll go one by one.